All right, so we are live. What is going on, everybody? We'll kind of wait for some people to come back in here, but for the people watching this after the fact, after it's been broadcasted, we do archive all of these streams. But I have with me today, President of Generation Jaguar, Jordan DeLugo. Jordan, what is going on, man?
Not much. I'm excited to talk some Jags football with you. It's been a while since we did
Yeah,
this. I think it was sometime during the summer, probably. But yeah, excited to talk some Jags football. Excited about the weather we've got right now in Jacksonville. Nice and chilly outside. I've been enjoying that. So yeah, no complaints on my end.
yeah. So it's pretty cold up there right now. It's only about like 70 over here in Orlando.
Yeah, it's like low 60s, high 50s right now. Feels good.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I've never really been much of a cold weather fan, but man, it was so hot and rainy this year. I'm kind of first year in a new house, so I kind of want to sit back on my porch and be able to enjoy some cooler weather.
Absolutely.
So we'll get out some people in the chat. What's up, Praynab, Swift, Goat the Viking, Kevin's in the building, Quarters, Phonic, Noel, what is going on, man? Reynaldo says, Jordan DeLugo, what is good? So yeah, guys, I have with me Jordan DeLugo. He does a lot of really good work over on Generation Jaguar and also on his own Twitter platform, man. He's definitely been blowing up over there a lot, just coming out with takes every day. Definitely a very, very underrated kind of Twitter account to follow. I put his the description to his Twitter account down below. But one of the main things I've been seeing you really last couple of weeks, you've been talking a lot about really the Lot J development. And me, like, I don't really follow the business side of the Jaguars that much. And I know with this whole thing, it's very political, actually. I know myself, like, I don't follow politics super deeply, and I definitely don't follow the politics of Duval County, being that I'm not a taxpayer inside of Duval County. So, kind of explain to me, as Michael Scott would say, explain to me like I am a 5-year-old. What exactly is going on with all the Lot J stuff right now?
Yeah, so I won't pretend to be like a political expert in the Jacksonville realm or anything like that, or you know, I'm not a politics writer. I'm not a city council writer or reporter or anything like that. But I have been paying attention to it, like you said. Um, Essentially, the Jaguars have come up with this idea for Lot J to be the next big project that they want to take on, and pretty much they've kind of put the city in a difficult position by making Lot J the next project, because when you look at what's really most important for the Jaguars um, product, I would say it's the stadium renovations. That is what is going to long term make Jacksonville a better home for the Jaguars. Now, Lot J will absolutely help in that regard, but this isn't a short term thing either. It's going to take 3 years before they even get vertical on construction after this is approved, and then probably another 3 more years to even complete Lot J to the extent that they're looking at building everything up down there. So it's going to take a long time, but basically, Shad Khan, this is what he wants, and if there are threats that, like Mark Lamping, the team president, or Paul Harden, the team's lobbyist slash attorney, they've kind of made threats or threatening talk, I should say. Harden has come out and said that Khan has been told by many other people, outside of the building, that he should be looking at other cities. And Lamping has talked about how the Jaguars have kind of been a free agent team since Shad Khan bought them in 2012. So basically, the Jaguars are coming at it from the perspective of, you need to do Lot J for us or else. So
So do
puts
you
the
think
city
that
in a
whole
hard situation.
So do you think that whole free agency thing is just more of a thing where it's like, look, like, we have the upper hand, we can leave over here if we want to, like, we don't intend to, but do you think that's almost them trying to kind of almost get an upper hand on kind of all the negotiations? Like, look, if you don't follow us, we will leave.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a negotiation tactic. I wouldn't say that there's no merit behind it, because it's true that they could leave. But I do think it's a negotiation tactic at this point. I think the bottom line is, when they do have this vote of the city council on Lot J, it's going to be approved, and that's going to be in January. And in between now and then, it's about just kind of the city trying to get a little bit more advantageous wording into the agreement, basically trying to make it a
Yeah.
little better for the city. It's a massive investment for the taxpayers of Jacksonville. And it's also a massive investment for Shad Khan. You can't look past that, but it is really an unprecedented investment from the city.
So I know, like, a few years back, there was a lot of talk of like the shipyard stuff, but it almost seems like that has kind of gone away, and kind of Lot J stuff is kind of more foreign. Are there still plans to develop the shipyards, or is it like Lot J kind of the bigger priority right now?
Lot J is the priority, without question. I think down the road, shipyards are still in play 100%. But for whatever reason, the Jaguars have, focused their sights on Lot J. That's what Shad Khan wants to do. And what Shad Khan wants is he's probably going to get it, because the bottom line is with a small market team, which the Jaguars obviously are, the owner is always going to have the upper hand. This isn't New York City where, like, if Shad Khan was the owner of the Jets or the Giants, you're not going to have a situation where he can be like, well, I have a more attractive city to move to.
Yeah.
But in Jacksonville, small markets like that, even though Jacksonville is outperforming some larger markets in terms of uh, ticket revenue and things like that, it's tough. And you just kind of gotta either get on board, fight for yourself a little bit, but get on board, or they're probably going to end up leaving. So that's just the way it works with
Yeah.
small markets.
And thanks everyone for being here. We're here with Jordan DeLuga right now. We will get into some football talk a little bit later, but I did want to kind of cover a lot of the Lot J stuff. So, like, how are you feeling about it right now? You think that ultimately this will get done through, kind of get some back and forth push, but ultimately, do you think that really just keeping the Jaguars in Jacksonville will prevail over all of these, the two different sides kind of going back and forth on this?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. It's about keeping the Jaguars in Jacksonville. Like I said, Paul Harden and Mark Lamping both made very threatening comments, if you want to take them that way. And so, yeah, it's basically you need to do Lot J, or you have a high risk of losing the team. So I do think it'll end up passing. I think City Council and most people in Jacksonville, even if they're not huge football fans, agree that having the Jaguars in Jacksonville is what's best for the city long term. And having someone like Shad Khan, who, even though he's playing hardball with the city, he is ultimately attempting to do more downtown than anyone ever really has.
Yeah. And we do have a comment here, and like a lot of people kind of say this kind of thing, but he says, "I'm sorry, but he's the billionaire. Why should the taxpayers pay for it?" You know what I mean? It's and obviously Shad Khan shouldn't be covering really, like, even most of it. Like, most of it should be the city, because this really isn't his thing. This is more so going into kind of developing downtown. So Shad Khan hasn't he put a large portion of his own money into like the stadium and into like all that kind of stuff? Like, and with the whole Lot J thing, is he going to be putting any of his own money down on this, do you believe, or is it like 95% taxpayer money, or
Oh,
how?
no. It's not 95% or anything like that at all. It's a huge investment on both sides, no question about it. The investment from the city, um, there's a lot of minor details that probably a lot of fans won't really care to get into, to be completely honest, that make it not a great deal for the city. It's kind of unprecedented in terms of the just the money that the city's willing to give Shad Khan. But yeah, Shad Khan is putting a ton of money into it as well himself. Personal money, I think about 200 million will come from Shad Khan's bank account. So yeah, both sides are contributing. It's just the contribution from the city is so much and so unprecedented in terms of the type of loan they're going to give Shad Khan, where he basically has an interest-free loan without giving any further commitment to the city beyond building Lot J. Like
Yeah.
the Jaguars have a contract, a stadium lease contract through 2030, but it's a type of deal where the Jaguars can get out of it with very little penalty. So one of the other key factors is a lot of people that are downtown, city hall reporters and people in city council, they want a longer term commitment from Shad Khan, and that's not anything that Shad Khan has been willing to offer at this point.
Yeah. So is that almost the ultimate thing as they say, look, this lease really is up in like 2030. If this thing is built in 3 years, then we're only going to get this much, use out of it. And all of a sudden you're gone. And then all of a sudden, who's really going to come to downtown if there's not really much, besides a whole lot J thing? Is that kind of a big holdup right now?
I mean, yeah, that's something that people are pointing to, and it's more like a 6 or 7 year process to get this built. But yeah, you invest all this money and there's no long term commitment from Shad Khan. It is a bit risky, but ultimately it is required. If you're to believe what Shad Khan's team is saying, it's required for the Jaguars to, still consider Jacksonville their home.
Yeah. And one thing that a lot of people say is like, Shad Khan just has a bad image right now, and a lot of it's just because of how bad the team has really been under him. So, like, what do you think of like Shad Khan as a whole? Do you think if you put everything combined the football and combine, how much he cares about winning and how much he actually cares about the viability of the Jaguars of St. Jacksonville, do you think he's a good owner?
I mean, that's such a loaded question. Obviously, from a football standpoint, he has not been a good owner. One playoff season under his guidance as the owner since 2012. That's obviously unacceptable. There's been a lot of half measures taken when it comes to trying to fix the football side of things. You had Dave Caldwell and Gus Bradley coming at the same time. You gave Gus almost 4 years, but then you kept Caldwell after Gus left, even though Caldwell had missed on Luke Jokel, his first draft pick, and missed on a lot of other guys in the draft and free agency. You kept him around. You brought in Tom Coughlin. You brought Doug Marrone from the offensive line coach, interim head coach, to be the head coach. So you're not taking a full measure towards rebuilding there. And then, of course, we know what happened with Tom Coughlin recently. They fired him and decided to keep Dave and Doug. And then now you've fired Dave this year, a couple weeks ago. And you've got a GM vacancy. So we just haven't seen Shad Khan really do the full measure in terms of trying to fix everything from a football standpoint. Off the field, he's been fantastic. I mean, this is a team that he purchased for $700-something thousand. Now it's valued at over $2.2 billion, I believe, by Forbes. It's one of the top 50 most valuable sports franchises in the world. And he's making money hand over fist, no question about it. He's doing a really good job from the business side of things. But when you talk about an owner showing his commitment to his fans, I think that's definitely been lacking lately. I think if he would come out and kind of show some goodwill towards the community, towards the fan base, that would go a long way. Winning would go a long way, obviously. But overall, I don't think you can be pleased if you're a Jaguar fan looking at him as the Jaguars owner. But if you're another NFL owner, how do you view Shad Khan? I think you like what he's done a lot because of the financial side of it.
Yeah, and
he's always willing to spend money. That's one thing you cannot overlook. He's been willing to spend money in free agency, and he's been willing to spend money on the stadium in terms of upgrading it for the players. He did the locker room. He did the indoor practice field. He's continuing to invest in big projects, and the city is as well. So you got to give credit on both sides. But yeah, from a money standpoint, he's been willing to throw everything he can at it. I just don't think he's found the right mix of football guys yet to carry the team to long-term success.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing with him. Like when it comes to the football side, it's like I think he needs a, besides this coming out during the state of the franchise thing and speaking there, I think he needs to speak at least maybe after the season's over, just kind of give his thoughts on the football side of things and do some things like that. I wish he would be a little bit more like in the public's eye when it comes to maybe doing some stuff around Jacksonville, like, even just doing a, one community service event a year, you know what I mean? Just something where he kind of shows himself, because he's definitely an absentee owner, from at least that's what our perspective of it is. He's not a Jerry Jones or anything like that, and it's not like you have to be someone that's always around, but at least show that you're around sometimes, instead of just wondering, is Shad Khan even at these games, or because I think that's kind of where people get the vision of him like not really caring, because no one really ever sees him. He doesn't ever really speak about the football side of things. So I guess those are some of my thoughts. But I think one good thing that's happened really in the last 5 years is it seems like some of the bigger markets have kind of been swallowed up when it comes to like where the Jaguars could potentially move to, because now we have two teams in LA. We have a team in Vegas. I don't see any chance that we move to London. So it's like, do you really see like if the Jaguars like say, okay, we're leaving, like where would they go? I mean, would they double up in Vegas? Like, what do you think they would, if they were to leave, where they would go?
You've heard St. Louis be mentioned. It's not like St. Louis wasn't willing to work with Stan Kroenke when he up and left to go to Los Angeles. They are a passionate sports fan base over in St. Louis, so there's talk of that. You could see potentially maybe the first Canadian team in the NFL permanently with Toronto, although Buffalo has ties to them as well. So those are a couple options. I agree that I don't think London at this point would be feasible for the NFL. Maybe down the road, but not in 2020. Probably not in the next 10 years, if I had to guess.
Yeah. So I did see one report out there basically saying, I forget what it is, but like basically the owners, that they were to take a vote on what the Jaguars do right now, whether it be like the stadium or around the stadium, that apparently they wouldn't get approval from like different owners on where the team is right now. Is that because of like the stadium? Because I imagine like as long as you have a lot of seats in the stadium, I imagine you're still going to be able to get their kind of, I don't know how the economics work behind it, but what is it that the owners would not approve of right now when it comes to the Jaguars?
I think that's more posturing than anything. I think that is the Jaguars saying we've got a lot of work to do to make Jacksonville more viable. I think if Shad Khan signed off on what was going on, the rest of the owners would do that as well, because he has a sterling record when it comes to financial investments. If he signs off on it, the rest of the NFL is going to sign off on it, in my opinion.
Okay, that makes sense. So, I just kind of want to touch on like Lot J stuff, but I do want to move on to some other stuff. But do you have any like maybe last words before we kind of close out the, Lot J / maybe new stadium kind of talk?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall it's a frustrating situation for everyone involved, because you're negotiating $100 million deals going on here. And when there's that much money on the line for a city and for an ownership group, it's going to be a little contentious at times, without question. I do think the Jaguars are offering the city a bit of a raw deal. I think Shad Khan could easily take on more of the brunt of this deal financially. But at the end of the day, he's got all the leverage. He's got the franchise. He can move them if he wants to. And if Jacksonville is going to keep them around, they're going to have to play ball with Shad Khan, or it's not going to happen.
All right, cool. So thanks for kind of talking about that with me, guys. We got Jordan DeLuga with me. We currently have 68 people watching, so definitely appreciate you guys for watching, man. Definitely drop a like on the stream if you guys can. You guys can follow Jordan on Twitter at Jordan DeLugo. He puts out content all the time on his Twitter and also on Generation Jaguar. And Generation Jaguar, all the links to that is down below: Twitter, Instagram. You can bookmark the website as well. So obviously the Jaguars a couple weeks ago made some moves when it comes to firing actually Dave Caldwell, and I thought it was a huge relief, because I thought that there was, Doug Marrone was definitely out of here just based on what his record was. But being the current, like seeing the different moves that Dave Caldwell was making, it seemed like he was making moves as if he was going to be safe this year, because he definitely didn't do his best to put really like a great and winning kind of team, the like team on the stadium or whatever, or like team on the roster. So I don't know, man. Like, but luckily he's out of there, and I imagine Doug Marone's gone too. So like, how do you feel about it all, man? Were you relieved when you saw that? And you think Doug Marone, once they get a new GM, he'll be out of here too?
Yeah, I think on the Dave Caldwell front, it's late. A lot of people would have fired him after 2018. I would have given him 2019 as the Jaguars did because, he was coming off the 2017 AFC Championship after the 2018 season. So I don't think you fire him after one bad year coming off the AFC Championship. After 2019, it definitely should have been done. There wasn't enough talent on the roster. They doubled down on Blake Bortles, which is obviously a mistake. And so, yeah, it's a little bit late, but better late than never, I suppose. I do believe Dave Caldwell, for whatever reason, did not put together a roster that had enough veteran talent to compete into 2020. Was he just being a good custodian of the franchise? That's kind of what my take is. I think he said to himself, regardless of whether I'm going to be fired or not, I'm going to do what's best for the franchise. And I think that's what he did by clearing out all that cap space, by acquiring all the draft capital. And I think now whoever comes in next at GM is obviously going to be in a great position to potentially get a franchise quarterback, to sign some key free agent pieces, and have a roster that already has some good young talent on it. And going to the Doug Marone topic, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if Shad Khan's going to hire a coach and then hire the GM like some people have talked about. I know you talked about that yesterday with the Urban Meyer situation, or if he'll go the more conventional route and have the GM come in and then hire the head coach, have the GM hire the head coach. I don't know what's going to happen. It does seem like Shad has leaned into giving the coach more power lately, but we'll see how it all plays out. I don't think he's decided yet, to be completely honest.
Yeah, it's interesting because you would think that, okay, at the end of the year, Doug Marone's gone, and then okay, they're going to go out there and hire a GM, and then the GM's going to hire a head coach. But it seems like they're kind of going a little bit according to Albert Breer's report, but they might go about actually hiring a head coach, and then the head coach is going to go out and kind of build the team, whether he wants to get a GM or not, and kind of hire from there. So like what do you, because I also like heard around the league that there's a lot of like GM head coaching packages. Like, okay, if a GM gets hired as a GM, they already know who their head coach is going to be, and I guess there might be vice versa too. So do you think that, like, are there teams that have actually done that? And because I know, like, you have teams like the Patriots and Bill Belichick, but Bill Belichick kind of worked his way into kind of getting that trust. But what do you think about that whole head coach centric dynamic?
I think it's interesting. Obviously, it's unconventional. It has worked with Bill Belichick. It's also blown up in a team's face when you look at Bill O'Brien with the Texans, what he did over there. And he's a guy that came from the Bill Belichick tree. So that's really interesting, obviously. I would be open to any scenario, but not every scenario, if that makes sense. I think it has to make sense. Like, if you're going to get a coach that's going to have all the control, it needs to be a coach that has the cachet and the resume and has earned that right to kind of be the figurehead more so than the GM, and the decision maker more so than the GM. So yeah, I just think it has to be the right situation. What I'm looking for in a head coach, there's a lot of traits that you need from a head coach, but one thing I specifically am looking for the Jaguars' next head coach, and for any head coaching hire in general at this point, is I want a guy that's going to bring in a culture that is well defined, and a guy that has a specific area where he can really make your football team better, whether that be defense or offense. I lean towards the offense, the offensive-minded guys, because let's say you go get a defensive head coach, you get Justin Fields or whichever quarterback you want, you have an offensive coordinator come in and do great things with them, guess what? That offensive coordinator's out the door. He's a head coach now, and you have to kind of rebuild that offense.
Yeah, that's happened with the Vikings. The Vikings had Mike Zimmer, and then Pat Shermer gets hired. 2 years later, Kevin Stefanski gets hired. And then now, you know what I mean? I don't mean to cut you off, but that
No.
literally happened with them. And you saw this year, like their offense started off slow. So I agree with you on that front.
Yeah, I just want a guy that the advantage that he brings to the team is not going to be negated when you have coordinators leaving. And I know that's like lofty goals to be talking about, having coordinators being hired out from under you. But when you're building a franchise, I think that's what you need to be looking at these days. A guy that can really give you an advantage on one of the two sides of the ball, preferably offense because it is a scoring league now, and a guy that if he loses a coordinator or two, it's not going to come all crumbling down and you have to rebuild everything.
Yeah. So I guess we'll kind of get your thoughts on the whole all the Urban Meyer rumors. Like if the Jaguars were to they fire Dave Caldwell, or not Dave Caldwell, but Doug Marrone, and then their very first hire is Urban Meyer. Like your immediate thoughts, what would you think about that hire?
I'd be skeptical only because of his resume and history of leaving organizations quickly. He's done that for various reasons. It would concern me that he would win a Super Bowl and then leave. Of course, if you're talking about a coach winning a Super Bowl, then you're excited, right? Obviously. But it would be concerning that if he did build a quality organization, that he would leave for whatever reason. There's been a myriad of reasons he's left teams in the past. But on the other side of things, he is a guy that I believe would bring a culture with him. He'd bring a knowledge of really just having and coaching fantastic offenses, and also he's been able to get great defensive coordinators on the other side of the ball for him. So he is a guy in terms of just when you talk about coaching and what he would bring to the Jaguars offense and the culture wise, I think he's a guy that makes sense. I do think he's a liar. I think that he is a guy that could leave you up and leave you with no reason or rhyme, really. So it's risky, but do I think he could work out as NFL head coach, especially if you're bringing in Justin Fields? I think that would be a good pairing. I just worry about the long term, how long he'll stay with you.
Yeah, I know my initial thoughts of the whole thing were like, we hear this all the time, but as it kind of sits with me a little bit, it does make some kind of sense. Now, I think it especially makes sense for the Jaguars because I think that if, like, say Mike Tomlin all of a sudden, like, he just says, okay, like, I'm out of here just for whatever reason. Like, I don't think putting, like, Urban Meyer in that situation would be all that great because they've had years of winning, years of stability, and they've had, like, just a lot of, like, a very stable franchise over there. So they want a guy that's in it for the long haul. But when it comes to the Jaguars, I mean, their locker room has been a mess. The culture has been a mess. They brought in I don't know how many head coaches, and they can't ever seem to put back like consistent years of success. But bringing in a guy like Urban Meyer, who like everything he touches just wins. I mean, he won 2 national championships at Florida, won one at OSU. I believe both of those were like in his second year of actually being there. Then I think he's a guy like he's got a very high ego. Like, and I think like he hears that, whenever Urban Meyer is discussed when it comes to the NFL, oh, he couldn't succeed in the NFL. Offense wouldn't translate to the NFL. Like, I think that he listens to that kind of stuff because he is very involved in the media. Obviously, when he quits the Florida job, he goes and works for Fox. When he quits the Ohio State job and goes and works for Fox, I mean, he's always around the game of football, and he's, very well respected by guys like Bill Belichick. You know what I mean? I think that ultimately making a jump to the NFL is definitely something that he would want to try to do. And now, like, if you were to kind of get him, you have to automatically assume, okay, like, we've got him for like 4 or 5 years. Like, we can't expect any more than that. But man, like, being able to kind of energize really the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars almost need like a splash, like sexy hire. Like, I don't think if they, brought in like Tom Dimitroff or whatever, and then he went and hired like, I don't know, whatever old coach might not have worked out. Like, I don't think that's necessarily like a sexy thing for the Jaguars to do. Like, I think that Shad Khan may want to make a splash. And then Urban Meyer, like with the way the NFL is forming to offenses, like I think that, as it sits with me, I think that it'd be like a pretty good hire. I'm not gonna lie. And I don't know if that's just because I've been sitting on it for a little bit, but obviously he's an asshole. Obviously if he comes out and says things to the media, you can't really believe it, just like how I mean, he's just a liar. I mean, he's proven that he is, and he's proven that he's not necessarily the best guy. And obviously, like, he had an assistant coach kind of get away with, like some marital abuse or whatever. And then he also had some like players, at Florida get away with a bunch of bad stuff. But I don't know, man. Like at the end of the day, man, like I want this team to win. And that's really a big priority of mine.
Yeah, it's hard to trust him, obviously, like you said. It's hard to believe he'll be around for more than a handful of years. And ultimately, for me, I think that's why I would probably not make the decision to bring in an Urban Meyer, but I would understand because of the success he's had, because of what he can do for your offense, because of what he could probably potentially do with a quarterback like Justin Fields. I would understand it, but to me, it's too risky.
So I've kind of let it known on this channel that really my number one thing that I would do is like when it comes to this offseason, I would try to hire Mike Borgonzi. He works over there with the Kansas City Chiefs. So then hopefully he's a package deal with Eric Bieniemy, because I think Bieniemy being able to work with a guy like Justin Fields, I mean, Justin Fields has some similar qualities to a guy like Patrick Mahomes. So I think that would be really just awesome pairing. So when it comes to you, man, what's kind of your dream scenario really for like kind of a GM / head coaching duo?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have like a dream duo at this point. I just want to get guys that can work together. Um, I obviously Borgonzi's been learning with the Chiefs for quite some time. He's been there a long time. You've got the player personnel guy over in Baltimore who's also interesting. I think you're probably going to be looking at somebody who believes in analytics with Tony Khan's, emphasis on that. I think analytics will probably be important for whoever they hire. But I don't have a dream duo at this point or pairing at this point. If you're looking at retread head coaches in the NFL, I do like Jim Caldwell. He's a guy that I don't think gets talked about enough. I think he did a very good job with the Colts and with the Lions. And then you see what happened in Detroit after he left. Matt Patricia's kind of left that franchise in shambles after Caldwell was able to take them to the playoffs 3 years in a row, I believe. So I like him a lot. He's a quiet guy. He definitely wouldn't be like the sexy hire. But I don't think you need to have a sexy hire. I think you need to have a coach that's going to win you football games. I think Caldwell can do that. I think he has a nice, quiet, understated leadership style, and he understands offense very well. When you look at college coaches, obviously Urban's up there. He's very interesting. I don't think you have a Matt Rule type of guy that's just a superstar rising from the college level to the pro level this year, but maybe you go get Joe Brady. He's obviously had a lot of success recently with looking at LSU. He's had some success with Teddy Bridgewater and the Panthers offense this year. Maybe you go get him because he's been able to work with Matt Rule and he's been able to have some very successful offenses recently. And he could definitely, I think, elevate a young quarterback like Justin Fields or whoever the Jaguars land. So there's a lot of options out there. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know specifically the strengths and weaknesses of every GM candidate because we just don't get to talk to these guys a lot. They don't talk to the media very much. So all you can kind of look at is their resume, and their resumes as player personnel guys or professional personnel guys or scouts. You can only read so much into what they've actually done because ultimately they weren't making the final decisions because they were not GMs. So it's interesting. I do like Daniel Jeremiah. I know he's a guy that people talk about. He actually never got fired from Philly when he was there as a scout. He left because he was just kind of burnt out. He was having to work crazy hours, and so obviously he's gotten some offers as a player personnel guy, and he's passed them up. But Maybe the GM job would be interesting for him. I just really respect his opinion. I like the way he thinks about the game, and you get to hear him talk, so you do get to know his personality a lot more than you do with the other guys that are assistant general manager types right now.
Yeah, and I agree with you on Daniel Jeremiah. I mean, I listened to the Move the Six podcast today. I mean, I love him and Bucky Brooks. I think it's just so hard getting them out of that comfy booth because they're in a position
Mm-hmm.
right now where it's like, I mean, how much stress do they really have? I mean, they just, they get to do what they love, watching football. They get to talk about it, and when they're incorrect about a quarterback, they don't have to live with it. You know what I mean? They can kind of let it go, and a lot of people kind of forget it. Then they get the next guy right. So.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's what's so hard about getting those guys out of their positions. But you never know. I mean, they might have maybe an itch to kind of do it because a lot of these guys. I mean, when you get up to that level, I mean, you're a competitive person, and you most of the time have some kind of an ego, and maybe they're just waiting for the right situation. I mean, we saw. John Gruden, just every year we were talking about, oh, is this guy going to get hired? This guy getting hired? And then it seemed like he finally found the right situation with like Mike Mayock and stuff over there where he said, okay, now's my time to kind of get back into it. But I don't know. It's gonna be awesome, man. These last 3 games can't go by fast enough because we're gonna be a fascinating team once the season ends. I mean, we got a lot going on. We got going to get most likely a new head coach, most likely we are going to get a new GM, and we're probably going to have the number 2 pick locked up. So I guess we'll go ahead and move into kind of the most highly debated topic, and that's the quarterback position. And thanks everyone for being here. We got 77 people in here. I'm here with Jordan DeLuga right now. You can see his links down below. So speaking of Twitter, you have made some typers quite angry with your quarterback take, man. About a week or two ago, you actually put out that Justin Fields is actually your number 1 quarterback. So let me know. I guess just give me your thoughts on really the quarterback class coming out and why you are so high on Justin Fields.
Yeah, I love the quarterback class in general, and I'll go ahead and the reason I like Justin Fields more than Trevor Lawrence is not because I think either of them are limited. I think they're both fantastic prospects. I think they can both make every throw. I think they both have excellent mobility. They both have the height you're looking for, the arm strength, the release, everything. When you really sit down and break down their games, though, game by game, going through it, I came away just more impressed by Fields' overall accuracy down the field. I think he's a little bit better throwing on the run. I'm not as nervous about him taking big hits because you look at Trevor Lawrence, he's 220 pounds. You love that, but he's 6'6". He's a little thin to be running around the way he does, and he takes a lot of shots and winds up just lying on the turf, for seemingly forever if you're a Clemson fan. Waiting for him to get up. And when you look at Justin Fields, he's 6'3", which is obviously not as tall, but he ranges in between 220 and 230. So he's got the thickness on his frame where you feel like he can take a little bit more of a beating, whether that's from an offensive line not holding up or from him carrying the ball. And I do think he's overall better with the ball in his hands in terms of running down the field. I think he's a tougher runner to stop. Both of them are great in that area. Both of them need to improve when it comes to anticipation, when it comes to staring receivers down, locking onto your number 1 reads. They both do all that. They've both shown the ability to throw with anticipation and to move through their reads, but they don't do it consistently. So basically what you're looking at is a couple guys that are very hardworking guys. They're leaders, excellent arm, excellent size, excellent mobility. I think they're both tailor-made for the NFL today. And overall, for me, it's just Justin Fields' accuracy. I think he's a little more accurate. And I think he is ultimately just more tailor-made for the game today with his physicality in terms of being able to hold up against some of these bigger hits. And I think he's a better runner with the football.
Yeah, I really like a lot of those takes. And do you think because right now it seems
I
like
love them
okay,
both. That's the most important thing. I think
yeah.
they're both going to be great. And I really like Trey Lance and Zach Wilson as well. I think both of them have a lot of starter qualities, a lot of qualities that could, see them be Pro Bowl type quarterbacks at the next level.
Yeah, we had a good year to suck because It's not like 2013 where it's like Eric Fisher, then Luke Jokel off the board, then like Deion Jordan. It's a year where, man, we got some quarterbacks, and we got to be in a situation where it's like, I mean, this will be the first time we ever really take a quarterback that doesn't seem like a project, because the last three quarterbacks we picked in the first round, when it comes to like Blake Bortles, Byron Leftwich, and Blaine Gabbert, a lot of those guys are like high upside guys, but had a lot to work on, whether it be mechanically or whatever, and kind of limited snaps. But we're gonna get a guy with Justin Fields that it's pretty damn good. But do you think with the top two, do you think there's going to be much movement? Like right now, it seems like, okay, Trevor Lawrence locked into number one, Justin Fields locked into number two. Do you think by the time the combine comes, maybe there's some talk that, hey man, Justin Fields might actually be moving up past Trevor Lawrence?
I think some people will talk about it. Ultimately, it's going to end up mattering what the Jets think. And I think most clubs are going to be more in on Trevor Lawrence because he's been doing it longer. He's the name that's been around longer. Somebody might like his height 6'6" more than Fields' height at 6'3", even though obviously both of those heights are totally fine for NFL quarterbacks. I think that people are fascinated by Trevor Lawrence because he's been starting since he was a freshman. I do think that there might be some people out there that kind of join me on the Justin Fields bandwagon, so to speak. But ultimately, I think Lawrence will go number one, and I think Fields will go number two.
So after that, obviously it seems like the top three, it's almost, I mean, as it stands right now, unless the Jaguars mess around and win some games, it seems like it's going to be Trevor Lawrence one, Justin Fields number two, probably Penei Sewell at number three to the Bengals. Who do you think the next quarterback is off the board after that?
It's so tough when you look at it because you don't know who's going to be selecting there. There's still a lot of movement that could take place. I'm leaning towards Zach Wilson being that guy. He's had a fantastic year at BYU, got a really crazy release, just gets rid of the ball so quickly. Strong arm. He's got a good height as well. He's a little lean, 210, but he's mobile as well. And he has taperum this year. I think some recency bias is going to come in when it comes to Trey Lance, who didn't have a great showing in his lone game of this year, which really shouldn't have even taken place because they weren't practicing as if they were going to go be playing a game. And then last year, he played fantastic football at North Dakota State. He's got a huge arm. He's got great physicality, but you worry about the level of competition. It's tough. I mean, I have both of those guys neck and neck. I like them a lot. I really do think both of them, if they go to the right system in the NFL, that they're going to be Pro Bowl caliber guys. If I had to put my money on it, I'd put it on Zach Wilson in terms of going in front of Trey Lance, just because of the recency bias. And I think somebody's going to fall in love with the way he releases the ball.
So I do want to kind of hit on this because, I mean, a lot of people in my comment section are saying this, and I'm kind of shooting it down, but I actually have a true Florida fan here. What are your thoughts about Kyle Trask being selected by the Jaguars? If like, say, for example, they decide to go left tackle at number two, and then in the 20s, they try to take a flyer on Trask. What are your thoughts about that, or maybe Trask as an NFL quarterback, being that you're a Gator fan?
Yeah, I am a Gator fan. I love what he's done at Florida. I love his size, 6'5", 240. That's fantastic, obviously. I love his ability to manipulate the pocket, to look defenders off, to throw with anticipation. But he does not have the arm strength or the mobility that you're looking for in the NFL today. I think if you want to take a flyer on him in the second round, I don't think he's going to make you very excited long term, just because, like I said, he does not have the arm strength. He can't throw off platform. He's just not made for the NFL today. I mean, if he came out in the 90s, maybe he would be a more of a fit for that NFL. But today, he's not mobile. He can't throw off platform. He can't get the velocity on balls when he's moving. He throws with a ton of anticipation, and I think a lot of his throws that are complete right now would not be complete at the next level. So ultimately, I'm not in on him as a franchise type of quarterback.
It is amazing, like really where college or where these quarterbacks are kind of going to, like where you almost need a mobile quarterback nowadays. Like, it seemed
Yeah.
like when I think it was in 2016 when the Rams drafted Jared Goff, it was like it seemed like that was really kind of the end of the era. That now you kind of see Jared Goff and he gives you a lot to desire just because like he can't really do anything. He's such only a pocket passer, and man, I think it really limits Sean McVay as an offensive play caller because I can't imagine if like Sean McVay had like a Justin Fields or something like that, what he could do like with a player like that. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy. You definitely need a mobile quarterback, and you need a guy that can navigate the pocket well. Someone who doesn't drop back and look to run, but someone who drop backs look to throw, but can run if need be. Because man, like I mean, the defense has to play completely different when a quarterback can run, and man, like you can drop back, not see anything, then run for a first down. I mean, it really is amazing. But yeah, the Jaguars. I mean, at this moment right now, we got 3 games left. Man, do you see the Jaguars really winning any of the upcoming games?
No, sure
Yeah.
don't. A lot of people talk about the Bears game. The Bears just whooped up on the Texans. I know they had lost 6 straight before that, but I think you're looking at a team that has a vastly superior defense, and I just don't think the Jaguars have what it takes to beat the Bears. Doug Marrone has had Indianapolis's number for whatever reason during his time in Jacksonville. So you look at that game, but again, that's another team fighting for a playoff spot at the end of the season there. And of course, you're not going to pick the Jaguars to take down the Ravens in Baltimore, regardless of what Lamar Jackson's doing in the locker room.
So I did want to get your. I don't like to mention this guy's name too much because every time I mention his name, I get about 25 dislikes on a video. I lose about 10
Oh
Twitter
gosh.
followers, and I lose several subscribers. But that's Gardner Minshew. I mean Gardner Minshew. I talk people down on him just because he's not the franchise quarterback. I mean, I know a lot of people say, "Oh, like Gardner Minshew isn't a problem. We should try to build around him." But I mean, it's a situation where guys like, I mean, Gardner Minshew is only going to play to the talent around the roster. NFL rosters go up and down, up and down. You're never going to have a perfect roster. And it's like a situation like right now with Josh Allen. Josh Allen is playing very well, but we'll really learn how he does in 4 or 5 years when that roster breaks down. But I guess when it comes to the future of Gardner Minshew in Jacksonville, like, would you keep him as a backup, or do you think it'd just be, kind of too weird knowing his history with the Jaguars to kind of keep him as a backup, or do you kind of look to maybe get a 4th, 5th, 6th round pick out of him?
Well, if you could get a 4th round pick for him, I'd definitely consider it. I think ultimately he should be the Jaguars' backup because I don't think you'll get a 4th round pick for him or anything higher than that. So, yeah, I think he's a valuable guy as a backup. You saw what he can kind of come in and just give you a spark. And I think that's what he's perfect type of guy for in the NFL. Just a good backup that can come in and play a little bit unorthodox. The NFL, the defense that you're going up against is probably not going to be ready for his style of play, no matter who the starter is in front of him, unless it's like Ryan Fitzpatrick, because they're pretty similar. But yeah, one thing I kind of came to a realization this year, because I was a Minshew supporter going into the season, and I still think he can be, an average starting quarterback in the NFL. If your quarterback is not the solution, then he is a problem. And basically, I'm just saying, if you don't have a franchise quarterback, then you have a problem at quarterback. You need to keep looking for the guy until you have a franchise quarterback, because teams that just settle for average or slightly above average quarterbacks, they ultimately rarely win at a high level consistently.
Yeah, and I guess the whole thing with Minshew about whether we should keep him as a backup, it's kind of up to him. Like, if he can accept the role as backup, then I think he's a great backup. But is he going to be a guy that's like, oh no, like I need to compete, like he's like begging Doug Marrone to go out there and play. So it's like,
Yeah.
look, like what kind of quarterback do you want to be? Do you want to be a good teammate and kind of sit behind the guy that we drafted as the guy when we really didn't draft you as the guy. We drafted you as a 6th-round pick, or are you going to kind of pout a lot, and are you going to, kind of force your way out of here? So I guess really when it all comes down to it, it's up to him because he has to accept a backup role. Other than that, I mean, of course his hands are kind of tied because it's not like he can force a trade or anything, but I don't know. I guess it just kind of depends on his mindset. But yeah, I mean, you're
It's also
absolutely
possible that the new GM or head coach, whoever has the power, will want a guy with a bigger arm, better, typical NFL traits. So they might not want him. I do think he's a quality backup, but that doesn't mean the next coach or GM will.
Yeah, because they might try to go for a backup that has experience, kind of like a Matt Barkley or Chase Daniel, someone that's knows his role, someone that's been around it a lot, has some experience here and there that can kind of talk to them. Because I don't know how much Justin Fields is going to be able to learn from from Gardner Minshew. Usually these young quarterbacks have a Fitzpatrick. I mean, these young quarterbacks have kind of a veteran to kind of learn from, but. Yeah, I mean, I've said to people, Gardner Minshew, I mean, he's not the reason why the Jaguars were losing games, but if he, and of course, yeah, if he has a number one offensive line in the NFL, he has a number one wide receiving group, the best tight end in the game, shutout defense where we used to beat the Colts 6-0. Yeah, of course he would win some games, but you know what I mean? Is that what are we really wanting to settle for good enough? You know what I mean? Especially when you had the opportunity this year to, really lock down a guy that could be truly potentially a top 5 quarterback. We got to go out there just because Justin Fields' ceiling is a lot higher than Trevor Lawrence or than Gardner Minshew's ceiling.
Oh, no question about it. His floor is a lot higher as well. I mean, they're not in the same stratosphere in terms of where they're at as prospects or even where they're at as quarterbacks right now. I think Justin Fields could go out and play a better game in the NFL than Gardner Minshew this Sunday.
Yeah.
So that's just where it is.
I know it's kind of crazy to think that, but hey, we got 108 people in here, man. Definitely thank you guys all so much for being here. If you guys have any questions for us, just throw them down here. We'll definitely answer them. I'm here with Jordan DeLugo. He is the senior writer, I guess we could call it, of Generation Jaguar. What do you call your title at Generation Jaguar?
Yeah.
What's the best way to say it?
I've never come up with a catchy title or anything for senior writer or site editor or anything like that. I just say I cover the Jaguars and I make a lot of fun designs that I love.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I love your the work that you do, really, especially on the Instagram, man. You've grown that one huge, and you got all kinds of really awesome edits. I've tried to do my own stuff, but I kind of do what I can. But it's definitely, I mean, you're the jack of all trades, man. You got the website going, you make website design, or you make cool designs on Instagram. You sell merchandise, you write for the team, all that stuff. But it's pretty cool. But are you? I know. You were on a lot of the Jaguars really media calls really before the season. Do you do any of that kind of stuff during the season, or is that more of a preseason type of thing?
Oh yeah, I've been on all the press conferences for the most part. As long as I'm available to tune in, I still tune in and get my questions in. It's been a little weird lately. There's been more Zoom calls and stuff like that, or conference calls instead of the Microsoft team calls, and it's just a lot easier for me to jump on the computer and ask a question on Microsoft Teams than it is via the cell phone. It's a little more complicated, but yeah, I still get on there. I respect the heck out of all the guys, all the coaches and players that have to go up and answer questions all the time, and it's been a really fun process this year. Just kind of learning more about these players like James Robinson, a guy no one had ever heard of. And just being a part of that has been really cool this year.
Yeah, and I know, I usually follow the press conferences a lot during the preseason and stuff, but then once the season starts, I kind of see all I need to know on Sundays. But
right.
we got one question in here. It's a good question. What direction do you think the Jaguars should go with the 26th pick? I mean, maybe I know you study prospects pretty deep, but do you have any prospects or potentially positions in mind for that?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the draft, you kind of have to look at what are you going to do in free agency, and who are you going to bring back from your guys that are unrestricted free agents? And so my biggest question here is, are you bringing back Cam Robinson or not at left tackle? Ultimately, I think he is at a below average starting left tackle. He is only 25 years old, so there is possibility that he could grow into the role more. But his market valuation based on Spot Rack's data is 11.3 million per season. And he is not a player that's worth 11.3 million per season. Do you want to pay Cam Robinson starting left tackle money when he's a below average starting left tackle? I mean, he's given up, I believe, the 8th most pressures of any left tackle or any offensive tackle in the league this year. And he's also given up a bunch of sacks. So I'm not bringing Cam Robinson back. I don't see a ton of potential for signing a free agent left tackle that can be a long-term solution. So in that scenario, if you do not have a left tackle entrenched in the starting lineup, I think you have to go protect your franchise quarterback that you drafted at number 2. So I'd be looking at tackle. I'd be looking at guys like Sam Cosmi from Texas if he's still on the board, Christian Darrisaw, Rashawn Slater. Guys like that I think would be really great fits at 26. And I get the idea of not creating a hole at left tackle, but I think even if you have Cam Robinson, it is still a bit of a hole because he's not one of the better left tackles in football. He's below average, and I just don't see paying him $11 million per year when you do have all the draft capital that you have as a wise decision long term.
Yeah, and it's crazy for me because my biggest emphasis this offseason, like I know we have a lot of money and have a lot of draft picks, but I'm not going to try to sit here and say, okay, we need to go out here and sign this big expensive safety. We need to find a really good tight end to bring in here. Like my main goal really, even especially when it comes to spending this money, is make sure our trenches are solidified when it comes to the offensive line and defensive line. It's tough right now because when you look at like the offensive line right now, like our offensive line, I mean, they're making a lot of money between, left guard Andrew Norwell, center Brandon Linder, right guard AJ Canada's even making a little bit of change. And then you have a left tackle who's coming upon a contract year. So I don't know if I want to get cute and try to, cut guys like Andrew Norwell and cut guys like Brandon Linder. I would probably, as much as people hate to say it, because like everybody hates Andrew Norwell, but, I'd probably keep him around and then, probably go out there and when it comes to left tackle, like, if Cam Robinson is too much money, go out there and sign at least a quality guy, at least a guy that kind of meets a certain like kind of price range, maybe like, $12, $13 million a year, somewhere like that. Because obviously Cam Robinson, I mean, he's the kind of guy that it's like he starts off the season good, but he starts to really, the value of him starts to depreciate as the year goes on. I don't know if it's him just not being able to take care of his body, but I go out there and like we probably don't re-sign left tackle Cam Robinson, but we got to go out there and get somebody because I don't want to go into the draft with just a huge hole at the left tackle position.
Yeah, I think even if you do go get someone, you are going to be looking to get a left tackle of the future still. But yeah, I don't have a problem with bringing in a veteran. I'm not sure you're going to get someone better than Cam Robinson on the free agent market this year. Russell Okung, he is set to be a free agent. He's 33 years old now, I believe, though, so you're not looking at a guy that's going to be around a long time. But he's certainly a better left tackle than Cam Robinson. Cameron Irving, who was a former first-round pick out of Florida State, he's kind of come on for the Cowboys this year after struggling for most of his career. So he's another guy that's going to be a free agent that could potentially be a guy you look at. But yeah, it's not a huge crop of free agent left tackles, and that's just generally the way it is anyways. You could also potentially trade for a guy if you think he's a franchise left tackle, if you're willing to give up some draft capital for that.
Yeah, and it really is. I mean, it's so tough to have a great offensive line because if you just look at the numbers, there's 5 starting offensive linemen on each team, and there's 32 total teams. So that's 180 starting offensive linemen that are rolling out this weekend. And it's like, if you were to have 180 different quarterbacks play on each given week, I mean, there's going to be some guys that completely suck. So it's really hard to find like, super quality guys out there and really have a whole entire offensive line with really no liabilities on that side. But I can imagine, like, I mean, it's just tough to be in a situation where it's like, okay, we don't spend much money at left tackle. We're going into the draft. You don't want to go into the draft saying, okay, we need to get a left tackle at the
Right.
in the pick in the 20s, because that's way too risky. You'd rather be in there and say, okay, we really like this left tackle. Oh, damn, he was taken, I guess, but look, this defensive tackle is very high on our board. We had to go get him. I mean, you can't miss on a guy and then all of a sudden go from having a guy that's like number 16 on your board and passing him up and going for number 38 on your board because of the position. That's when you really get into struggles when it comes to really the roster, because the Jaguars did something similar like that not too long ago in 2019. And we had 2 third-round picks, and that was Josh Oliver and Quincy Williams. And Dave Caldwell went out and said, look, like, we had some tight ends that we liked last year. We didn't get any of them. And then, this year we kind of had to get Josh Oliver. So he basically said, look, I reached for him. You also heard later on, look, Quincy Williams was the last starting caliber linebacker that we saw. So again, that's like a reach. You don't want to get in a position like that because you'll get in a lot of trouble later on for it.
I completely agree with you. You don't want to go into the draft being like, we have to get a left tackle in the 20s. But like I said, Cam Robinson hasn't turned out the way you expected him to. He hasn't developed into a quality starter. You could bring him back and just have him as a bridge to the next guy. You definitely could do that. You have the money to do that. So I wouldn't be completely against bringing him back. I just don't think it's going to end up being money well spent.
Yeah. Because, I mean, we can go out and do you think it makes sense because I know like left tackles get paid a lot of money, but would it make any sense to actually franchise Cam Robinson for a year? Or is he just not worth all that, like cap?
I get what you're saying. And because it's only a 1-year investment and the Jaguars have plenty of cap space this year, that could work out. It's never going to look good paying Cam Robinson, elite level money, regardless of how long it is. But I wouldn't be totally against it if you still have the money to go get some free agents that can make an impact long term. So, I mean, I wouldn't be totally against it. It sounds kind of crazy just because he's not very good. But if it's only for 1 year, it's only for 1 year,
Yeah, because for those of you guys that don't really know what the franchise tag what it entails, so basically you franchise tag a guy for a year, then they make like an average of the top 5 paid players at that position. So, and all the money, it's fully guaranteed and it's straight off of the cap. So it's it can be a tough position to be in. And then, every year I think it goes up like 25% of what it was previously. So it's a tough position. But I mean, if you go out there and you don't spend all your money in free agency, I mean, it could be a kind of an option they look at as they say, look, we want to have flexibility going into the draft. And look, if like we land a guy at left tackle, this guy that we're really high on in the 20s, that's good. But it's tough because usually with offensive tackles, it seems like real runs start to go on them at the very least, like at the very latest in the 15s, because you usually get after the first round at least 6 or 7 offensive linemen off the board. And being the Rams right now, the Rams are really getting hot. So I mean, they could very well make it to the NFC Championship game, and all of a sudden we're picking at number 29 or 30. So it's definitely a dangerous game to play.
Yeah, it would be. And like you said, basically it just comes down to the money. I don't know the average of the top 5 left tackles in the NFL right now. I'm guessing it's like in the upper teens, but I'm not sure about that. But could you afford that for a year? Yeah. Do you want to pay a below average left tackle that much money, even if it's only for a year? Probably not. But it could work. It could potentially work.
Yeah. So, yeah, we've been live for about an hour, 4 minutes. We've had a lot of people in here. So thanks, guys, for being here, man. I'm here with Jordan DeLugo. We're probably about to end this now, but I appreciate everyone for coming by. Sean, Mr. Jags, Gaming with Jelly. It's Reese was in here the whole time. Thanks, guys, for being here. Also, guys, if you haven't already, man, make sure to follow Jordan DeLugo on Twitter at Jordan DeLugo. And hey, Austin, if you want to post your question again, I didn't see your question, so go ahead and repost it. But yeah, definitely follow him. He's also on Generation Jaguar. He's the lead beat writer, publisher, editor, Photoshop guy. He's also president, runs a website and all that kind of stuff. So hey man, do you have anything cool coming up on the website anytime soon?
Probably gonna drop a mock draft tomorrow, 7-round Jags mock, where we've got 6 picks in the top 78, thanks to some trading. Other than that, not too much planned, just the typical stuff going through the week. Obviously, we'll preview the upcoming contest and against the Ravens, which, gosh, that could be a really ugly performance for the Jaguars fans to watch.
Yeah, you just have to have your fantasy guys. You have to have J.K. Dobbins lined up. You have to have you have to have Lamar Jackson lined up. But I'll get the Austin Hughes question before we head out. He says, I know there's a lot of hype behind Fields, but how do you feel on Zach Wilson? Jordan kind of touched on this earlier, but I don't know if you want to kind of reiterate how you feel about Zach Wilson.
Yeah, I love Zach Wilson. I love what he's done this year. Great release. He's got the height you're looking for, mobility you're looking for. He's a little thin. He does have an injury history, which is concerning. And obviously hasn't had the level of competition that a Fields or Lawrence has had. He hasn't had the sustained production. Again, this is the first year where he's really come on and played elite football. So those are kind of my concerns with him. I think he's a little riskier than Fields or Lawrence, but I love him. I think he's going to, if he ends up in the right situation, I think he could absolutely be a Pro Bowl quarterback. He's got ridiculous arm talent, and the release that he's got is just so quick. He can go from seeing something to getting the ball there in the blink of an eye.
All right, cool. So that was Jordan DeLuga, guys. He is definitely your off-season analyst, man. He puts out really big boards like prospect rankings, a lot of mock drafts. So he's definitely a guy to follow. But Jordan, thanks so much for coming on. Hopefully we have you again on sometime.
Yeah, let's do it sooner than we did in between this time and the last time. I'm definitely down to come on. Always a good time chatting with you, taking some questions from the fans out there. Appreciate you having me on. I do look forward to doing it again soon.
Absolutely, man. Go Jags.
Go Jags.